Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin State Senator representing the 25th District, Romaine Quinn, is our very special guest today, Thursday, February 29th. That's weird to say. February 29th, 2024. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden. You're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Learn more at americansforprosperity.org and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. As a reminder, Senator Quinn joins us live on the last Thursday of every month right here on DrydenWire Live. If you've missed any of our previous chats, you can find a recording of those on our website at DrydenWire.com, right here on our Facebook page under our videos tab, or on our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/DrydenWire. That's all I have for the intro this morning. Romaine, good morning. How are you?
Morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. Like, everybody's sick everywhere all the time. And I even got sick for the first time in a decade. I got a cold like a couple weeks ago, which was weird. So if I'm getting sick,
it's going around.
Yeah, exactly. Has it been able to stay out of your guys' house?
Oh gosh, both boys had something a while ago, coughs and all that, and made the nights lots and lots of fun. But they're both over it now. So knock on wood, winter's kind of done, right? So we should be done with sickness. I mean, did we actually
done
have
like January 12th.
Yeah, I was going to say we didn't really have winter.
So weird. So I'm glad you came on. I mean, obviously you come on every week, and it's always a joy to chat with you. We usually don't have anything written down, sometimes a topic or two. I only have one thing, and I'm sure we can talk about a lot more, but maps, because that's been obviously a huge difference. We've talked about the maps on the last several episodes, but now that those are seemingly going to be the new maps that are out. So for people who don't know what this is or what we're talking about, could you kind of catch us up on that? And what has kind of happened since last month?
On the short version, right. I don't think we need to walk back through the entire
probably not
mess that we've been in, frankly, since April with the election of Janet Protasewicz. So, but what happened in the last month is the legislature made a decision. It was very clear after the consultants came out with their recommendations that we were going to get a raw deal. And so we could either roll the dice and let the court pick one of the crappy maps that existed, that we knew existed, or we could let them draw a brand new one that we've never seen that could even be much, much worse. And so we made a decision to cut our losses and take a map that one we didn't want, but two was the least worst scenario for the legislature. And so that's where we're at today. The governor signed them. They were actually his maps. And so when Republicans went under these maps, I don't want to hear another word about gerrymandering ever again, because this is the map the governor wanted.
Sure.
So it was interesting for our district. So for the first time since the 1960s, I went back in all the blue books. Barron County will no longer be part of the northern Senate seat that they've always been a part of. And so it might have had a different number back in the 60s. I think it was the 23rd at one point, but it was always affiliated with the northern seat, all the way to the city of Superior, Bayfield.
Oh,
Ashland.
I see.
Yep. So now under this map, Barron County is drawn out of that seat, conveniently, because I live in Barron County. And Barron County is now put in the 23rd, which goes to the east and to the south. And so Barron County, if you live in Rice Lake, you are now part of a Senate seat that goes all the way down almost to Black River Falls. Clark County, Neelsville is pretty much the southern tip. It'll go all the way east to Abbotsford. Medford picks up all of Taylor County. It still goes up into Price County and then comes down back into Rusk and back over to Barron. And so it kind of makes this new, almost a triangle shape. And it'll be the 23rd. Our assembly seat, for our listeners as well. So when I was in the 75th Assembly District, I had about half of Washburn County, third of Washburn County. Dave Armstrong had a little bit more. He had the city of Spooner, where I never did.
Yep.
Washburn County is now gone, and they are part of a new assembly seat that also goes north. All of it goes north and to the east. And so Dave Armstrong in Barron County is no longer the representative for the 75th. They changed the number on us too. It's the 67th. And so the 75th, yeah, I know.
I didn't know that one. So far, I've been reading about a lot of this and looking at the maps. I didn't know about that. What do you mean, the 75th? Because under the 25th Senate District, there was the 73rd, 74th, and 75th Assembly districts. So now you're saying it's the 74th, 73rd, and 67th?
Actually, well, Dave is no longer part of the 25th either. He's part of the 23rd because Barron County got moved, right? So the 75th is moved over into Polk and Burnett County. So basically all they did was they swapped Barron County and Polk County. I would argue to get me out of the seat. No. Some people say that's a conspiracy theory, but the first map Evers drew, I was out by like a mile. So convenient, now the whole county's out. But yeah, so there's going to be some changes. So I think a lot of the faces will stay similar. Representative Sapik in the 73rd got a raw deal.
She's screwed.
They drew a seat
intentionally
that just grabs Superior in a thin line all the way to Bayfield and Ashland.
Just a little sliver right over there. That's got to be like 65, 70% Democrat right now. Like that district.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is they took two seats that are literally 50-50 to a T and made one super Republican and super Democrat.
Wait.
So I don't know how that combats gerrymandering when you go from two competitive seats to two seats that only one party can literally win no matter what.
That'd be you'd be referring to the 73rd and the 74th.
Yep.
You're right, because the 73rd, this was when, so 2 election cycles ago, Nick Milroy, who had been in for about 10 years-ish at that time in the 73rd Assembly District, a Democrat, and he had someone run against him, Keith Kern, a Republican, and this is before the maps were changed. It was in like a couple of years ago before they were changed. And it was, I think Keith Kern lost or Nick Milroy won by like 130-ish votes. I mean, that was a hyper-competitive, very close race.
Super. Nick Milroy won by 200 votes.
I think it was less than that. I think it was like 130, maybe to 150. I don't even think it was as high as 200. It was very close. But then the maps then got realigned. Oh, I'm sorry. I think in that same year, that was the year that, wasn't it Bolin against Myers, right? The incumbent Myers. And he lost that race like 51 to 49%, right? It was like a 2 point.
He got outspent by $750,000.
Right, which is insane for an assembly district race.
Right.
So, you're right. Those are pre-Republican gerrymandering. We'll still use that word because I don't want anyone to say that it isn't. And fine, it is or was. But those were hyper-competitive races. Yep. Then they got changed and they were still, at least the 73rd, that was very close. Right, Sapik barely beat, or relatively very close for Laura Gapsky.
A couple hundred votes again. Yep.
Yeah, and then I don't remember what it was for Chance Green because Myers decided not to run again.
So that seat was also within a point.
I can't remember that. Yeah, those are two very competitive races.
Right. Yeah, so it's odd that to combat gerrymandering, we take two seats that are highly competitive for both parties, and we draw them in a manner where neither can win the other.
So you're saying, so the 73rd is very obvious. Anyone has seen this map. I mean, it's, like you said, Superior and then just a sliver of the big, it's very, 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 very Democrat, which it is what it is. That's what it is.
Yep.
But you're saying the 74th, which I haven't gone through, but apparently now Spooner, where I am, is in the 74th.
Yes.
So in like just a few years, we're in 3 different districts. I'm not even sure. Yep. It's just so weird. It was you weren't, but then somebody was, and then it was Nick Milroy, and then it was Dave Armstrong, and then it was Angie Sapik, or maybe it was the other way around. People can't even figure out who the representatives are.
Right.
But you're saying the 74th is now a very conservative district?
Right. There's no competition now because there's no blue areas, right? So the 74th was always balanced out. You had a lot of rural, but then you also had Ashland, and you had Bayfield. To counter some of that out. So you had to be competitive. Whatever message you're talking about in Park Falls and Phillips might not work in Ashland and Bayfield or in certain townships, right? So you had to run a good race. You had to have a message that appealed to everybody. And now all those blue areas are drawn into that new 73rd. And so it took out all the competitiveness of the 74th. So I'm sure Chance Green is giddy about that. But yeah, it messes up the other seat. I mean, it is what it is at this point. I just wanted the public to know, like, we plugged our nose and voted for this map, because it's like, why are you complaining about it? You voted for it because we had to, literally. So there wasn't really an option. So that's where that's at. But now, what do we do with the holdovers, right? Now, what does that mean? So every 10 years when we're supposed to draw maps, not in the middle of the decade like we've done now twice, every 10 years with the census, there's always going to be half the Senate not up, right? Because we stagger. We're 4-year terms, and every 2 years, half is up.
Yeah.
So traditionally, every time someone comes under a new map, but they're in the middle of their term, they get to hold their seat that they were elected to and finish it out, even if they're not living in it. And so that's what's happening to us in the 25th. I was elected the senator for the 25th for 4 years. I'm halfway through my term. And even though they draw Barron County out and my house out, I am the senator for the 25th yet. So previous attorney general opinions have always said that those people get to hold over and finish their term.
I think that makes sense.
But I'm sure there's going to be a court challenge to that too, wanting us to have to move ahead of time or completely spring a special election. So we're going to wait and see. Not going to hold my breath. The court can do whatever they want. So we'll see what happens. So there is always a chance that someone could sue and say, oh, Romaine doesn't live in this seat. So he either has to move in 60 days or we're going to call a special election. So again, that doesn't happen. That's not past precedent. We have previous attorney generals, and the practice has always been that you're a holdover. So we'll see what happens. But I have every intention of finishing my term as a senator for the 25th.
Is that something that is in the works right now? There has to be an end to this, an end date to this, for someone to make an argument or a case that, no, we need to start holding special elections, or everyone, even if you're in an off cycle or in a midterm for your seat, you have to run.
Right.
There has to be, you have to take papers out, April something, but isn't it April 1st?
Yeah, the court set their own deadline of March 15th to actually pick maps if we didn't come to a conclusion. So I'm assuming any of those decisions, at least if you want to have an impact this November, would have to be done by then.
Okay, so we're looking at March here, so the next few weeks.
Yeah, because
they have to do something if they want to do something. Otherwise,
literally you have to print the ballots.
Okay, so let's assume for a moment, as it sits right now,
yep,
nothing has changed. The maps are changed. But that is, by the way, that's effective after the next election. So as of today, Representative Dave Armstrong still is the 75th, right? That hasn't changed yet. So this will take effect
November.
Right. Yeah. Well, November or January?
Well, once he's sworn in January.
So technically, that's helpful. Now let's assume for a moment that in your case or the others that are in your situation, that you don't have to run again for Senate, that you just ran for 2 years ago. So does that mean then in 2 years? So you're still the 25th senator for another 2 years, even though you're not. So then who's in the 23rd? Because that would be where you technically are now, but I shouldn't say technically, but geographically you're in the 23rd. But technically the 25th, that's just confusing. Who's in the 23rd? Isn't that Jesse James?
Senator Jesse James. Yep. Jesse's a great guy, former police chief in Altoona.
He's been on our show. I love that guy.
Yeah, so he is the senator right now from the 23rd.
Uh-huh.
But he also got the same fate I did, and he was drawn out of the 23rd and drawn into the 31st. So conveniently, they went and grabbed Altoona and grabbed his house and threw him into the Eau Claire seat. So he's out. So technically, 2 years from now, when the maps are totally new, I would be living in the 23rd, and he's going to be living in the 31st, which is currently by Democrat Jeff Smith.
So in 2 years, again, we're going off of the presumption that nothing else changes right now. Like what it is right now is what it is for the rest of the year and through the election.
Yep.
So that would mean, though, in 2 years, you're either going to have to move into the 25th if you wanted to stay in the, because let's face it, everybody knows you, or most people know you as far as elected officials go, because some people don't pay attention to politics, but most people know who you are in the northwestern part of the state. So to move back into that district, you would have to actually move into it, or since Jesse James is going to be going to another district, you would stay where you live and run in the 23rd.
Correct. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. So 2 years is a long time.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Someone asked Edming, how's he sitting? Yeah, I haven't looked at his. Where's he now? I mean, how did his seat turn out, or that district?
Yeah, Jimmy Boy.
Is that the 87th?
lives in Glen, Florida. Got elected with me in 2014 to the assembly. Served ever since there.
Yeah.
I can't remember his seat number. I
I
think
think
he
it's
was
the
the
87th.
or yep, I think you're right. Some 87th sounds
I
right.
think so.
So he was one of the many, a couple dozen of us that got paired. So instead of drawn out of his seat, he got paired with another Republican from Bloomer. So they drew Jimmy Boy's seat and Rob Summerfield's seat together. So now they have to figure out, is one going to retire? Are they going to primary each other?
Sure.
Are they going to move? Are they going to, right? So that's just one example. There's literally a couple dozen of them. I think they paired 30 of us. They drew us out completely or paired us with each other. 30 of us currently elected incumbent Republicans. And you know how many Democrats they drew together?
I'm going to guess 2.
Yep. And one's already
really?
retiring. One's
Okay, that was
retiring.
actually a guess.
Matter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Not intentional.
Well,
but.
That's politics. That's the way it goes.
Right. You win some, you lose some. Or
Hey, there you go. It looks like you have a campaign manager already, Mac Patrick.
I think Matthew Kirkpatrick for judge.
That would be that'd be fantastic. That is awesome. That dude sells himself short all the time. That guy is just phenomenal.
Someday.
Hopefully.
Him, not me.
Hopefully. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no.
right. And
anyway, we are really busy. End of session.
Perfect. I was just going to ask. This was wrapped up. I believe Senate has to go back one more time, or maybe a little bit more in March. But the Assembly, I think, is finished for the year already, right?
Yeah, but you never know. We'll see if we can get them back.
Sure.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So end of session or getting close to the end of session for you.
Yep. So I have 9 bills. I'm still trying to shuffle through the process, and it makes it trickier now, right? Because if they didn't already go through the Assembly, they're dead. And we have to hope the Assembly passed the version we wanted, because if we try to amend it and send it back, it's also dead because they're not coming back, right? So I think the biggest one, I would say probably, well, they're all important, right? Or I wouldn't have drafted them. But
Sure.
The one that's really important, I think that really weighs on a lot of us, is the continued funding of the Office of School Safety. So what is the Office of School Safety? In 2018, Republicans made it in response to one of the school shootings that happened across the country to say, what can we do to make sure our schools are the safest they can be on issues that we agree upon, without diving into which guns are scary and which ones should be banned and all that stuff, right? So what can we actually do? What can we actually agree on and do? So at that point, we created the Office of School Safety in the Department of Justice. We required all school districts to create a safety plan. Many schools didn't even have a plan. What do we do when there's a school shooting, if there's an active school shooting, or any kind of traumatic event? And so this office would be the coordinator of all these plans. They'd be the experts on it to work with schools to develop these plans to make sure best practices are in place. And it was to divvy out $100 million that we sunk into our schools to harden them, right? Change out your locks, have one point of entry, put in security cameras. Many of our schools, especially our rural schools, it's, we've got 30 different locks and we don't know who's all got a key. But every janitor since the 60s could probably get into the school right now because they all have their keys. So, life was different, right?
Yeah.
And we're in a different world now. And so that $100 million went out the door. Since then, they applied for federal grants and expanded their operations to include a tip line. It's called Speak Up, Speak Out. And so we know a vast majority of incidents at our schools take place, but someone knew about it ahead of time. Someone knew a kid was struggling. Someone knew a kid was going to bring a gun to school and just didn't tell anyone. So this is a confidential 24/7, 365 tip line for students to call in. And since 2020, they've taken in 10,000 tips. 10,000 tips from students, right? Now, it's not just about, I think.
I understand.
Bringing a gun to school. It could be bullying. It could be suicide prevention. It could be harassment. It could be all sorts of different items. But we know that this office, by coordinating these tips, relaying them to school officials, and building relationships with law enforcement, have literally thwarted attacks on our schools. No doubt about it. And so right now, this office, those positions were funded with federal dollars. That money is gone. And so the Department of Justice has used ARPA dollars to continue that program and the other expertise that office offers to school districts. Because then not only that, they have teams that go out in regions and respond to issues within schools. So, for instance, the office came up during the Jamie Kloss case and supported the Barron School District and the community. The Office of School Safety came up and supported the Rice Lake community when they had 3 different teen suicides in the last couple of years, right? So the supports they offer are really immeasurable in terms of their value. So if we don't pass my bill, these positions are going to expire at the end of 2024. ARPA dollars can't be spent past 2024. And so no one wanted to use state dollars because it was grant funded to begin with.
I get it, and that's always a hot, contention, and that's even a reason that sometimes states don't even want to take federal money because it's great for right now, but what are we going to do in 2 years or in a year or 3, whenever it runs out? Now we look like the bad guys actually for canceling these programs. So it makes sense, but we took this, we as in the state.
Yep.
And now it's running out. How much is it going to be? Your bill, how much is this going to be?
It's not even a lot. So our bill is just to get them through the following school year, and then we can debate in the next budget cycle how to fund it. So right now, it's going to end on December 31st of this year. And that second half of that school year, all the services will be gone overnight.
Understood. So this is the stopgap.
Yep. It's about $1 million. It keeps it open through that next school year into the next budget cycle. We can debate. How should we fund it? Should we fund it? Should it look different, right? But the idea that we're going to cut this office off at the knees
halfway through a school year,
when we have the statistics that show that it truly is meaningful, I think is a huge, huge mistake. And so no one wanted state dollars, so actually we found a pot of money. They said, go find money. There is a surplus in the background check and concealed carry fees. So right now you reapply your concealed carry every 5 years. And when you do background checks, there happens to be more money in that fund. Now, I'm a believer that we should not be taking funds that were not appropriated for something and moving them for something else. Sure. If there's too much money in the background check and concealed carry pot, we should be lowering the fees, right? Instead of charging $31 to renew your license, charge $21. Why are we running a surplus? But the fact is we have one, and it's not state money, and it's a stopgap. It's a one-time expenditure. So there's some heartburn in my caucus. We're a couple votes short. I was in Madison yesterday, again, trying to convince my colleagues that we have to keep this office going. God forbid something happens in the next school year because we ended a tip line where someone could have called and warned a district or police. I mean, that's on us. And I don't like that whole blood on your hands crap. I get that thrown on me all the time, but that's real stuff.
Yeah. And for $1 million, I mean, again, millions a lot, but when it comes to our budget, that's nothing.
Right. So I'm hopeful. We got time. We're on the floor on the 12th. That's our D-Day. Whether or not we have the votes to pass it to make sure the office goes beyond 2024.
You said that you were talking to some people in your caucus. Is this a bipartisan? Or it sounds like it would be, but most things sound like it would be bipartisan to me, and then I kind of find out it isn't because apparently most things aren't bipartisan. Is this one of those that is mostly bipartisan, or is it partisan line?
It passed the Assembly 97-2. I think the two socialists and Milwaukee voted against it because they just hate cops. So,
I think I know one of those down the line. Yeah.
It's definitely bipartisan. Again, disagreements on technicalities, funding, the philosophy behind it. Some think the office is just, why don't these kids just call law enforcement? Why do we need to run a tip line? Well, I'm not going to call law enforcement at 2 p.m. in the cafeteria when I hear someone talking about a gun, right? They can text this tip line too, and it's confidential. So it's just getting people to understand what the office does and the value that it provides. So
that was the biggest of your 9 that you want to get done.
Yep.
What would be your next tier?
Because I can't even remember all 9 off the top of my head now.
I don't think you have time to go through all of them anyway. But what is another one that's on there that you're really hoping to get more attention and get more eyes on?
The next biggest one, I think, which is a national discussion we have to have, is my bill on data privacy. So Representative Zimmerman has been working on this, Shannon Zimmerman from the Hudson area, for like 5 years, I think. I held a hearing on this bill when I was chairman of Science and Technology when I was in the Assembly, and it didn't get done back then. So we are so close. It passed the Assembly, voice voted, no opposition. If there was, they were quiet because it was voice voted. No one asked for a roll call. But what we're saying is as a consumer for companies that collect data. One, you should be able to ask them whether or not they're harvesting your data. You should be able to get a copy of what data they have on you. You should be able to ask them to delete it if that's what you choose to do, because it's
Love
your
it.
data,
Love it.
right? Very simple. So the world of AI is here. AI doesn't mean anything without data, right? It needs data to run. So your personal data is more important now than ever. And so you should have a right to know if a company is harvesting your data, who they're selling it to, and what they have. So maybe you want to correct the record. Like you said, I was 35, I'm 33. You need to correct your data because it's misinformation,
Sure.
right? So we're getting a lot of pushback from some of the business community in terms of cost of compliance. They want one federal standard for data privacy. I get that,
I get
but
that.
getting the feds to act is like, yeah, I mean,
Good luck.
look at the southern border. We're talking about the most pressing issue the country's facing right now, and they can't agree on that. So I'm not going to hold my breath for that. So right now, I think we've got the votes. It passed the assembly. We would join 15 other states in the country finally protecting consumer data, because people don't realize, I mean, it's billions of dollars. Your data is worth money. It's monetized, resold, and companies literally track everything you do, from your grocery store purchases to your credit card purchases. So everything you do, someone knows about it. So not to creep you out, but
No, it is. When we went down to Chicago over Christmas, we would leave someplace and I'd get a notification on my phone. How would you rate, like at the restaurant I just ate at? I'm like, what in the world? That's
Right.
creepy. Why are you telling me? Why are you following me around? So I turn my location off. Like I'm going through all this stuff. I'm like, that's so bizarre. Like, I don't mind if I go on Google and I click on trying to find like new speakers or something, and then all of a sudden I see ads for speakers. That actually makes sense to me. Like, if I'm going to see ads, at least see ads that, I'm kind of actually interested in. Totally fine with that. But that's like the limit. So with this, you said pass the assembly. Was this another big one in terms of bipartisanship? Or is this kind of goes down the line? Love it.
It's unanimous. Yep.
Unanimous.
So now the heat's on, because I think the business community thought it was dead, and then it got voice voted, and then they're like, oh crap, it could actually pass. So they've been just hammering the Senate to try to not get us to pass this. But again, at the end of the day, it's only for users that have 100,000 customers annually. So it's not your local gas station. It's not your local small business who doesn't know how to comply. It's not any of that. Sure. And frankly, if you're making money off the data, you've got the money to comply with the law if someone wants to have their data erased. So it's that simple.
Yeah.
So that's big. I got to go to Seattle and tour Microsoft's campus.
What?
Yeah. And we had big discussions on the future of AI. Not the future, it's here. But Microsoft is a leader and a proponent of data privacy, because they understand the benefits and the consequences of artificial intelligence. So they're a big supporter of data privacy, where other big companies like Google and stuff are just not, because they're a data harvesting company.
Right. That's their revenue right there, or a significant portion of it.
Right. So that's big. I think that's really important, and that should be bipartisan.
And that was coming up in March as well.
Yeah, so March 12th is our last floor day. So if these 9 bills aren't on the calendar that day, they're dead. And then we have to try again next year.
Okay. Is there another one? We have time for another one more of your 9, like the top 3. Do you remember another one?
Sure. Deer hunting. That's a big one. So our bill would stop doe hunts in the northern forest zone for 4 years. So there's been some consternation. It's very hard to get the deer hunting or hunting community to agree on every issue. We can talk about back tags, where we register deer online or in person, all the different seasons. There's lots of baiting and feeding, all sorts of discussions. But what's pretty universal is that in most of the northern forest zone, which there's a geographic line around certain counties, the deer herd is not what the DNR thinks it is, plain and simple. And until we can get a wolf season, until we can get a handle on predators, we need to hone in the top predator in the state, which is us, and recognize that our deer herd cannot sustain the numbers that we're harvesting until we can build the herd back. And so we amended it. So there's still allow for youth hunt. We want youth to actively engage in hunting. And if all they see are does and they're not allowed to shoot one, we could lose them, right? We want them to come back year after year and enjoy the hunt. So it would also help with the pressure points if if there's a lot of deer around Shell Lake, but none in the rest of Washburn County, and there's a lot of does, youth could go to that area around Shell Lake and still harvest does. So I think it could open up more opportunities where if I'm a private landowner and I think I have more than enough does, I'm not allowed to shoot one now, I'm going to go out and find myself a 14-year-old who has a tag and offer them the ability to hunt on my land. And so I think it could create more opportunities for our youth to access lands that were never available before for families.
So the goal behind this being to increase the population of deer, right?
Right. If you kill a doe, she can't have fawns.
Right.
Right. So, so that's our plan. If you look this last deer season across the northern forest zone, our kill is down 31%. Iron County 15%, Douglas County 28%, Ashland County was 33%. It's not because we just suck at hunting all of a sudden. Like the same amount of licenses were sold, the same amount of hunters were in the woods, but they shot 30% less deer because the deer aren't there. So why do we keep giving out the same amount of tags, not only to in-state but out-of-state Minnesotans who come in here, fill their freezer, and go back home? So. Yeah, and again, we're going to monitor it. 4 years is a long time. We're going to look at this year by year by year, and we can make changes along the way, but that's going to be a big impact for northern Wisconsin as well.
So March 12th is a big day.
March 12th will be a big day. I'll have a long press release with all the bills that made it or died.
Didn't make it. And are most of these, or at least these first two, seem like those would be, if they get gone through the Senate, and considering how they were passed by such a majority in the Assembly, these seem like these are not going to get vetoed, right? Or very likely not. Got the deer hunting, is that one? I'm
not going to hold my breath because the DNR doesn't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be told when they're wrong, and they will call the governor and say, hey, veto this. So I'm hoping the governor can recognize there's a lot of frustration in northern Wisconsin.
Well, that's a lot of tourist dollars, man. That helps our economy in a huge way here in northern Wisconsin, and people aren't going to be coming to their cabins if they're not getting any deer anymore. So, yeah, it's going to suck for a little while. I mean, I'm not a hunter, as you know, but I can at least see just the basic economics of this, that we need to maintain what we're known for here in rural northwest Wisconsin during hunting season.
I'm hoping he can, look past that. I get it. Departments are supposed to be experts, and you're supposed to rely on them, but they're not always right. So.
Not always right.
So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for next month then. Man, we're going to have so much to go through. We're going
so much to talk about.
That's the whole show, is we're going to go through every one of those things after on March 12th or after. When you send out that press release, we'll publish it, and we'll go through that on the next month's show.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Romaine, thanks so very much for coming on. Always a pleasure chatting with you. What do you have coming up this weekend?
Oh, gosh. The Barron County Republican Party gets recaucused and renewed. So that's exciting. The end of the drama is near. It is upon us.
Oh, man. I love talking about that, too.
New elections, fair elections, people that actually live in Barron County. And, it'll be good.
That's this weekend.
Yep.
Awesome. Special thank you to Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn for taking the time to come on for a chat with us today. I'll see you right back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I'll be back for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.